Question number 11, Jan Logie.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And while already knowing the answer, my question is to the Minister for Social Development and asks, is she still intending to introduce the Second Amendment to the Children, Young Persons and Their Families Act this year, now that the Māori Women's Welfare League has filed a claim in the Waitangi Tribunal challenging the proposed changes?
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Anne Tully.
Yes, I am committed to ensuring that children and young people and their safety and well-being is at the heart of the new Ministry for Vulnerable Children, Oranga Tamariki. The second stage of the changes tabled today will do this by allowing young people to remain in care or return to care up to the age of 21, with transition support and advice available up to 25, establish an information sharing framework to keep vulnerable children safe from harm, and as I announced yesterday with Minister Adams, include low-risk 17-year-olds in the youth justice system. The proposals would also amend the purposes and principles of the Act to give explicit recognition to key Māori concepts of mana tamariki, whakapapa and whanaungatanga when working with tamariki Māori.
Supplementary question, Jan Logie.
Does the bill include any of the changes to the whānau hapu and iwi provisions that prompted the Waitangi Tribunal claim?
The Honourable Anne Tully.
Well, Mr Speaker, my first answer would be that the member should read the bill. It's on the table. But as I have said from the very beginning and will continue to say, the Ministry for Vulnerable Children, Oranga Tamariki, will put the safety and well-being of children and young people first above everything else. The very best outcome for all tamariki is to be with their family, their wider whānau or hapu, in a safe, stable environment.
Speaker.
Point of order, Jan Logie.
I think it's probably pretty obvious. I asked if it included any of the changes to those provisions that were outlined in the Cabinet Papers and prompted the claim.
Yeah, no, but then went on to add, and whether those changes or potential changes might have prompted a claim to the Waitangi Tribunal. I'm not sure how you could expect a minister to know what prompted a claim to the Waitangi Tribunal. It's been addressed. Further supplementaries?
Point of order, Mr Speaker.
I've made a ruling, but I will listen to the member.
Thank you. I'm thinking because it was clear in their claim that they were prompted by the Cabinet Papers that spoke explicitly about changing those provisions. So that's not up for debate. So I really was asking for an answer about those.
What I will do to move the matter forward, being generous on a Thursday, is I'll give the member the opportunity to ask an additional supplementary. She may be advised to rephrase the one that she just tried. Jan Logie, supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Does the bill include any of the changes to the whānau hapu and iwi provisions as outlined in the Cabinet Papers that prompted the Waitangi Tribunal claim?
The Honourable Anne Tully.
Mr Speaker, not knowing what prompted the claim in the eyes of the Māori Women's Welfare League, what I'd suggest to the member is that those were 3 papers of about 8 that were taken to Cabinet to propose the wide raft of changes to the Child, Youth and Family Act. And I refer the member to Bill 2, Section 13, Part 2, A through L, that goes through consistently all the issues that need to be taken into account when any intervention with whānau is considered. But I repeat, the bill makes it very clear, and I am very clear in my mind as the Minister promoting the bill, that the very best place for tamariki is with their whānau in a safe, stable and loving environment.
Supplementary, Mr
Supplementary
Speaker.
question, Jan Logie.
Actually, I'm going to ask the same question again, because the Cabinet Papers specifically outline...
Order. Member will resume his seat. I gave her an opportunity. The member has now asked that question twice. I considered it had probably been addressed the first time. It has certainly been addressed the second time. It's over to the member how she phrases her own questions, but supplementary questions are an opportunity for her to quiz the minister. There seems little point in being repetitive, but it's the member's opportunity to ask supplementary questions. Supplementary question, Jan Logie.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
Point of order, Jan Logie.
Were you just clarifying to me that I can use my supplementary questions in any way that I wish?
Absolutely. Provided it's within the rules of standing orders, the member has the ability. I guess I'm giving her some advice. It's over to her whether she takes it. Supplementary question, Jan Logie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, my question is that in the Cabinet papers, the provisions that explicitly talked about removing and changing provisions to the whānau, hapu and iwi parts of the Act, have any of those changes been included in this bill?
The Honourable Anne Tolley.
Mr. Speaker, my answer is largely as I've given, and I refer the member to that section 13. But to help her and to help the House, there is a list of things that have to be taken into account, and they include, when making decisions about a child, that have to be considered, and they include, wherever possible, the relationship between the child or young person and their family, whānau and usual caregiver is respected, supported and strengthened. The relationship between the child or young person and their siblings is respected, supported and strengthened. The family, whānau, hapu, iwi and usual caregiver have a voice and a role in decisions made about the child or young person. And as I said in my answer to the primary question, we have included those terms that give particular recognition to key Māori concepts of a child, that mana tamaiti, tamariki, whakapapa and whanaungatanga, when working specifically with tamariki Māori, so that means that we have extended the provisions that were in those original first three Cabinet papers.
Freedom of choice winning.
Supplementary, Mr. Speaker.
Supplementary question, Jan Logie.
If the Waitangi Tribunal agrees to consider the claim, will she delay the bill to ensure that the reforms do not breach the government's obligations under Te Tiriti o Waitangi?
The Honourable Anne Tolley.
Mr. Speaker, I've tabled the bill in the House today.
Question number